Welcome, welcome, welcome. Who loves a great mystery? Awesome. I'm Cheryl Richardson Harmon, retired military. I work with the 135th USCT research team. I am the historian for Goldsboro Sigma Chapter Military Sorority, and I assist with my family history every year for our Cox reunion. So, Where Eagles Come From has been an awesome read for me. I am sure you all will love it, so sit back and enjoy a 150-year-old mystery. Chapter 1, Who Am I? I was just told that when I die, our family name, John Thompson, would die out with me because my dad doesn't have any boys. I feel that my family will be losing its identity. Why me, God? You see, I am the only child of John Thompson. There are no more John Thompsons in my family, and John has been passed down through 3 generations. This seems like a real heavy burden to carry for my whole life. However, in a way, it's sort of special. In case I haven't told you yet, my name is Macy Thompson. I live in Southern California, and this coming August the 1st, I will be turning 12 years old while on vacation at my grandparents' place in South Carolina. My father is an engineer at JPL in Pasadena, California, and works in space studies. He doesn't talk a lot, just about the moon and stars. My mother, Hannah, is a baby doctor. We live in the hills outside of Los Angeles, and I attend St. James School. And I am the only African-American child in my class. Wow. The keys are in the attic. Macy is finally at her grandparents' house. Freedom. I'm up early at the smell of bacon cooking in the kitchen. I sure hope we have pancakes today. Grandma makes the best ones with crispy edges. I like mine with peaches and lots of butter. I see Grandpa is already down at the dock, and the boat is loaded with crab traps. He has to put out the traps every morning since he is in the crabbing business. Grandpa is not a big talker either, but I like to ride with him anyway. He talks with his eyes. It takes about 2 hours to set all the traps before we can start back to the house.
So I'm Amy Bauer, and my husband and I, Jay Bauer, wrote this book, and we wanted children to understand the story of the 135th, but by doing that, we teach the children how to do their own genealogy. And that's why Macy's on this adventure, or this mystery, to find her genealogy. And she and her grandmother, who she loves, just like I did, and I'm sure every child has someone older than they are that they admire and would work together to find their own family.
So I sit next to Grandpa on top of the captain's seat. I look at him and decide to ask, "Tell me about your father," but he doesn't answer. So I decided to ask one more time, "Grandpa, tell me, what was your father's name?" Finally, Grandpa says, "His name was John Thompson." I say, "Just like you." Yes. I don't bother him again, but I wondered if he would ever tell me about his parents. And I think to myself, did his father have gray hair like him? Was he quiet like Grandpa?
Which is the reason I wrote that part, is that my grandfather never said a word. He sat in his chair and he thumped his fingers on the side of the arms of the chair, so that's the character in the book. And every child can write their own story about their own grandparents or someone they admire.
We get back to the house, and Grandma is in the kitchen at the table watching the canaries in the corner cage. I sit down across from her and she says, I made you your favorite cookies. Do you want some milk to go with them? Yes, ma'am, I reply. Who loves cookies and milk? Of course we do. Very healthy meal. Grandpa wouldn't tell me about his parents, so I asked Grandma, can you look in the trunk today? What do you think is in the trunk? Do you think there are pictures? Grandma says, okay, after supper tonight, we'll go up to see what's in the trunk, Missy. Discoveries in the library. Okay, another question. Who goes to the library now? Of course, we all have computers, right? Discoveries in the library. Good morning, Grandma. Grandma has a big breakfast set up for me today. She says, good morning, child. I have something to show you. What? I say with excitement. Well, last night after everyone was asleep, I came back out to the porch and started looking through the papers. We discovered in the trunk and I found an Army discharge certificate from the USCT. That means the United States Colored Troop. It also states that Moses Jones was discharged in Louisville, Kentucky, October the 23rd, 1865 for his honorable service. Moses was in the United States Colored Troop and was a Union soldier. That's exciting. Macy, eat your breakfast. Auntie Sissy is on her way over here to look at the papers. Also, get dressed right away as we are going to town this morning. I want to tell Grandpa my dream and Grandma my dream, but she seems really busy, so I have to save it for later.
So one of the reasons they go to the library is because there's information about your genealogy in the library. So you find your family clues, and now you go to the library and see what they might have on public records.
Auntie Sissy arrives, and they talk on the back porch about the papers and the wooden box with the brass buttons. They think the buttons were on his uniform, but how does that explain the tags? Auntie Sissy drives us all into town. We are heading into the library. In the library, we go to the family history department, where we are greeted by Marty the librarian, who is waiting for us. Grandma leads us all into the room and she shows Marty the papers, the treasure box with the buttons, and the family Bible. Marty is very intrigued. He goes over to the computer and pulls up the Army service records and finds Moses Jones. It shows he was a United States Colored Troop in 1865 and was from Elbert County, Georgia. Auntie Sissy stands up and shouts, Marty, he must be our Moses Jones. Marty looks through the soldier's record, and on the last line, he finds Moses Jones, Elbert County, Georgia, who served in Company D, 135th USCT, enlisted March 27, 1865, and mustered out on October 23rd, 1865.
So now, we know we have Macy Thompson, but how does Moses Jones fit in? And the mystery is to find out how you find that. And they mentioned, Cheryl mentioned in the book, that they found some buttons, but it still doesn't tell you how they're connected. But they're connected somehow, or they wouldn't have them. So the mystery goes on.
The record also states he applied for a pension in 1882. At supper, there are more people than usual. As I'm told to set up 10 plates on the table, I ask, who are all those other people coming for supper? Grandma replies, Auntie Sissy is staying, Uncle George and his wife Sally, plus Auntie Susie will be here for supper. Grandma calls me into the kitchen to help make the biscuits and to put the deviled eggs on the plate. This sure looks fancy for supper, Grandma. Well, it's family, dear child. And we all sit together for dinner every day, right? Of course we do. Uncle Pete speaks up and says, "Hey, doesn't Cousin Maxwell work at the Pentagon in Washington, D.C.? I think he is a colonel in the Army now. Maybe Pops can call him and ask if he will get the record and send it to us." With all the new discoveries, Grandpa agrees to call Maxwell. Maxwell is Auntie Sissy's son. After supper, Grandpa comes into the kitchen and lets us girls know that he has spoken to Maxwell by phone and told him the story. He tells us that Maxwell said he will go to the National Archives as soon as possible and see what he could find on Moses Jones.
So there's 2 more clues. We found out that he has a pension record, which is a living record that he's left behind to put it together. And where can they find that? They can find it at the National Archives in Washington, D.C. So those are good clues.
Yes. I think good news, Grandpa. But how long would it take? I will not be able to sleep until we learn about Maxwell, what he finds out. Okay, family reunion plans. The next couple of weeks, we are very busy with everyday chores. Grandma gets calls all day long from the aunts, uncles, siblings asking about the family mystery. When Grandpa comes in for dinner in the afternoon, Grandma brings up the idea of having a family reunion this summer. We could have it in August, she says. Everyone wants to see the buttons and family history that we have uncovered. She tells him that everyone in the family wants to hear the whole story about the pension records, as we are hoping to know the ending very soon. Grandpa agrees it would be easier if we have everyone come and hear it for themselves with their own ears. Okay, you plan the family reunion for August, he says. I wondered quietly about the soldier Moses of the 135th USCT. I wondered what it was like to be born a slave. I wondered what it was like to be freed from slavery. Did he have brothers and sisters? Are they part of my family? It's still a mystery to me. Just think. I started the summer with my mother, father, and grandparents. And now I have a family that goes back to the year 1820. How lucky am I? Well, the mail comes every day, 3:30 in the afternoon. And I'm given the job of going out to the road and retrieving it for Grandma. That is what I do. And to my surprise, there is a very large envelope with my name on it in the mailbox. My head explodes with wonder. I can't run back to the house, or that mean goose in the front yard will chase me, and she bites. So I sneak past that mean goose and get to the porch. A mystery in the envelope. Okay, family reunion day is party time. After we pray and eat all the delicious food, Grandma and Auntie Sissy start telling the story about how the family history was discovered. They tell how the secret was locked up in an old trunk in the attic for about 40 years. Grandpa proudly directs Grandma and me to stand up and take a bow. And everyone applauds. I tell the family about the stacks of papers in the trunk and how Grandma and I reached under the pile and pulled out the book with the leather cover to find out it's the original family Bible. I explain how its first entry date goes back to 1820, and that Tony Jones's birthday is the very first one listed in it. Grandpa tells us God has protected the trunk that was stored in the attic for our family so that we could discover who our ancestor was. We know that some of our ancestors were born into slavery, and we know who served in the United States Army in the Civil War, who fought for freedom for his family, that's us, and our nation. At that point, Colonel Maxwell goes on to tell us what he has found in Moses Jones's pension record. Everyone is quiet, like it is right now. And the only noise is a boat horn from the river in the background. He starts by saying that the pension record is 163 pages. Wow. Can you imagine, just think, 163 pages, the wealth of information that they have on him. Moses Jones, before he went into the service, probably was a slave, most likely, when he was in the military, and his family and everything after. All that is there.
Yeah, big clue.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, and the same you can do with your family with these clues. You'll be surprised what you'll find and what will show up. And then also the DNA. Don't forget not to do the DNA when you're looking for family.
Well, goodbye, beautiful river and South Carolina. A few days later, we're all standing on the front porch with Grandma and Grandpa. All of Dad's brothers and sisters have come over to say goodbye, along with the cousins I have been playing with all summer. I feel sad that I'm leaving Grandma's house. I love it here on the river, at this old house in the state of South Carolina. Mama opens the car door and says, "Macy, it's time." I turn to Grandma and give her the biggest hug. She is my best friend. I tell her how much I'll miss her and what an awesome summer we had together. I tell her that she is the lead detective and I'll be back for more adventures next summer. Grandma replies, "God willing." Then I turn to Grandpa, who has a tear in his eye. He tells me that he'll miss me, but I know he won't miss all my questions. Well, I'm back home, and guess what? 7 a.m., September the 7th, school starts. I'm in the schoolyard with my classmates. We are all waiting to meet our new teacher that no one knows. We gossip about what we think we know about her. So much catching up to do with friends about what we all did this summer. Chris says she went to the Grand Canyon, and it was so scary because it was so big. She did say that it was very beautiful and the colors gorgeous. Billy went camping to Yosemite National Park for 2 weeks with his family. He loved riding the rapids. Sam says he just went to the pool and hung out all summer. Jane asks, "Macy, how was your visit to your grandmother's house? Were you gone all summer?" Just then the bell rings. We all line up to enter the classroom. The classroom door opens, and right there, inside the door, stands a woman that looks just like my mama. Our teacher is African American. Wow, how things change in a minute. Last year, I was the only child with no family and the only African American in my class. To my surprise, my teacher looked just like me this summer, and I learned I have a very big family. I thought this summer was the best summer ever. However, it might just be the best summer. I'm no longer Bashir. I'm no longer alone, and I'm just filled with pride. So, dedication. This book is dedicated to the 135th U.S. Color Troop, who worked so gallantly as part of General Sherman's army during the Civil War. The inspiration of this book came from years of research and studying the pension records of the veterans of the 135th USCT. The regiment was formed in Goldsboro, North Carolina on March 27, 1865, for men who previously served in the Pioneer Corps and was part of General William T. Sherman's army. Also, there's a glossary of terms in the book. And there is also a family and home information source checklist. If you want to find information out on your family, there are ideas such as looking at their death certificates, birth certificates, their health records, and military service records, and a host of more information. And thank you.
So we didn't tell you the whole story. We left some of it for you to read and to get into. So when you buy the book, you can fill in the spaces and how she found the trunk, why was the trunk there, the other clues in the library, and why they decided to have the family reunion, and who came to the family reunion. And her grandparents talk about her grandparents and what they did for a living for generations. They lived on the river and they were in the crabbing business. So you get to, there's more in the book than what we just read, but it gives you an idea of not only that we found the 135th, which had not been discovered for 150 years, it was a lost troop, and the fact that we found her grandparents, or her great-grandparents, and her ancestors, which were lost to them also. So we hope you enjoy the book. We hope you get it, and let us know what you think of it. Thank you.
Any questions?
What do you do to get a DNA?
Well, there's several different places you can do DNA, and as we have worked as the research team, I'm going to give you an example. There was a Cogdale farm not too far from Goldsboro, and Lewis Cogdale had 200 slaves on his property. So there are a lot of people whose last name are Cogdales. And are they related by name or by blood? Because they all came from the Cogdales. And everyone who was a slave used their slave master's name until 1867, when they were allowed to pick another name. And some of our research took us a long time to do because they changed their names and we had to find them. So that was something, but if you go to Ancestry.com, you can pick up a kit or 23, there's another one, and there's Gen X and like that, and you can take that DNA. And since I've told people about that, we put 3 or 4 families together who didn't know they were related. So don't give up on the DNA.
Any more questions?
How do I get pension records?
Well, you can go online to the National Archives in Washington, D.C. and look up to see if their name is there. And if you are able to get to Ancestry, and who else is it? Fold 3 has some of them. Fold 3 does not have them all. And actually the National Park Service has names too. And if you can find their card, their service card, that says they were in the service, they had to apply for the pensions. So just because you were in the Army doesn't mean you applied for the pension. So if you did, there's a card, and the National Archives should be able to find that. They paid pensions up to 1932. So if you were a soldier and you had grandchildren or great-grandchildren who were dependent on you, they could still file for that pension. So it goes down to 1932. Okay. So there are other records like that, the death certificates, finding where somebody is buried. And with that, if they're buried in a cemetery and not private property, you might be able to find out who maintains that cemetery plot for the family, and then you would have another name in which to connect. Or you would be able to go to the church where they were baptized or they were members and find somebody who might have those records. So every piece of this becomes part of the puzzle to solve your own mystery. And that's how we found the 135th. We did the genealogy for over 1,100 men to find them all. So it's quite a task, but it was worth it. It was a lot of fun, actually.
I've read your book and enjoyed it very much. Are there other books or websites you could recommend if I wanted to learn more about the 135th?
Well, not really. You can go to the African American Civil War Museum in Washington, D.C. And on that, or in that museum, they do have information about all the USCTs, and there's a memorial, and the men of the 135th are named on that memorial. Sometimes they're double named, and some names are left off because it's not an exact record. And even today, I'm finding people that were in the troop that we didn't have, or they weren't in the troop and they were in another troop. So that's a good spot. I would go there first.
I would like for Donald to come up so we could see his uniform for the 135th.
As Donald comes up, you know, we can talk about that this is an amazing regiment of men. They weren't just formed from men of Goldsboro, North Carolina. They came from Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina mainly. And they built all the roads for General Sherman's army, the infantry that marched from Atlanta down to Savannah, up to Columbia, South Carolina, back down to Fayetteville and into Goldsboro. Almost 1,000 miles that they did the whole march. And then from Goldsboro to Washington, D.C., where they did the Grand Review, that's almost 480 miles, all on foot, all building the roads and making sure that they are able to get the supply wagons, the artillery, and the ambulances across the country. They had 60,000 men that marched. Donald represents one of them.
Yes. Do you have anything you want to say?
If someone would like to join the research team, how would they go about it?
You can go to 135usct.org. We'd love to have you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.